Have you ever stood at the threshold of your childhood home, suitcase heavy in your hand, heart heavier still? That's where I found myself, not out of nostalgia, but necessity. My name is Sarah, and after losing my husband Michael and weathering a heartbreak that left me adrift, I came back to the very farm where my story began. The red barn, endless fields, and the old porch where I'd once leapt barefoot, suddenly these weren't just memories. They were my present. Now, you might be thinking, why return to the past when it's the future you've lost? But the truth is, sometimes the only way forward is through the familiar, through the dirt beneath your fingernails and the echo of family voices. As I stood there, Daniel, my brother, now the farm's backbone, welcomed me with a hug that spoke of unbroken bonds. His wife, Karen, and their son, Ethan, had filled this house with a new kind of life. The clatter of dinner, the soft thud of textbooks, the murmur of family routines. If you've ever experienced grief, you know it compresses your world into a single, painful point. For me, that point was softened only by the rhythm of the farm, the sunrise chores, the earthy scent of hay, and the gentle persistence of the people who refused to let me fade into loss. Now, let's pause. Imagine a life that's shifted from library stacks and bustling city streets to the relentless cadence of rural work, feeding chickens, mending fences. It was a seismic shift, like moving from digital to analog, or from Wi-Fi to walkie-talkie. But it was precisely this change, this tangible, muscle-aching labor, that began to crack the shell of my sorrow. The farm, in its stubborn constancy, became both my challenge and my sanctuary. I found myself not as a visitor, but as a participant in the ongoing story of this land. The farm wasn't just fields and chores. It was a living ecosystem, an intricate feedback loop, like the mycorrhizal networks under the soil, always connecting, always communicating. And just as those hidden roots nourished the crops, the people around me, my family, became my unseen support, slowly coaxing me back to life. So why does coming home hurt and heal in equal measure? Because home exposes every scar, but it also offers the tools to mend. That's the reckoning I faced, standing once more on that weathered porch. And as the days unfolded, I realized the farm would test me, stretch me, and, perhaps, restore me. But the real catalyst for my transformation wasn't the land itself. It was Ethan, my nephew, who soon became the heartbeat of my hope. Let me tell you a story about how healing doesn't come with a grand announcement. It sneaks in quietly, sometimes in the form of a teenage boy with mud on his boots and hope in his eyes. Ethan, Daniel's son, was relentless in the gentlest way. Every morning he'd knock on my door. "Come on, Aunt Sarah, help me feed the chickens." At first I protested. The gravitational pull of grief is like inertia in physics. An object at rest wants to stay at rest. But Ethan, with an almost Newtonian persistence, kept nudging me back into motion. Now, you might be asking, can chores and routine really mend a broken heart? Here's where the science comes in. There's a concept called neuroplasticity. It's the brain's ability to rewire itself, to form new connections after trauma. I didn't realize it then, but Ethan was helping me reroute my mental pathways, one garden row at a time. When he said, "You've got the greenest thumb, Aunt Sarah," it wasn't just encouragement. It was an invitation to rediscover a dormant part of myself, the caretaker, the grower. Ethan's conversations weren't small talk. He shared his dreams of studying agriculture, eager to modernize the farm, to run soil tests, maybe even install a drip irrigation system instead of relying on the old pivot sprinklers. His excitement was infectious, his hope a renewable resource. And in helping him, I found my own reserves of resilience, previously buried under layers of sorrow. One day, as we knelt in the garden, Ethan confided in me about Karen's illness the year before. "The farm healed me when Mom was sick," he said. That hit me hard. Here was a teenager who'd weathered his own storm, who knew that healing isn't linear and that sometimes tending to tomatoes is as important as tending to wounds. In that moment, I saw the farm not just as a place of work, but as a living metaphor, a biosphere where every act of care, every seed planted, was an act of hope. So, what was Ethan really teaching me? That you don't have to face your pain alone. that healing is iterative, like planting and harvesting, season after season, and that sometimes the youngest among us are the wisest, reminding us through patience and persistence that hope can take root anywhere, especially in the soil you once called home. Have you ever realized mid-stride that you're exactly where you're meant to be? That's what happened to me, somewhere between gathering eggs at dawn and collapsing in laughter with Ethan in the hayloft. As weeks became months, I rediscovered not only how to use my hands driving the old tractor, repairing fences, but also how to be present. Every ache in my muscles was matched by a lightness returning to my heart. Now, you might be thinking, isn't farm life just relentless work and unpredictability? Absolutely. Storms can wipe out crops overnight, a lesson in both meteorology and humility. But there's also an ancient rhythm to the land, a kind of circadian cadence that grounds you. I'd wake to the sound of roosters and the sunrise painting gold across dewy fields. That connection, the symbiosis between land and soul, was what I'd been missing. The turning point came one late summer day, stacking hay with Ethan. It was exhausting, sticky work, but by the time we finished laughing, breathless, I felt free for the first time since Michael's death. That night, lying in bed, a simple truth crystallized. The farm wasn't just where I'd run to escape grief. It was where I was reclaiming myself. My brother Daniel's words echoed, "You've always belonged here." Choosing to stay wasn't just about geography. It was about agency, about stepping into a role I'd forgotten I could play. In ecology, there's the concept of keystone species organisms that, though seemingly ordinary, hold an ecosystem together. Maybe I wasn't heroic, but maybe, in this small corner of the world, I was becoming essential again, not just to the farm, but to my family. So, to those listening who find themselves lost or uprooted, let me assure you, renewal can come quietly. Sometimes, it's not a grand epiphany, but the steady accumulation of small acts, milking cows, tending gardens, laughing with a nephew that rebuilds a life. I chose to stay, and in doing so, I found hope seated in the very ground beneath my feet. Let's bring it full circle. These days, when I walk through the fields at dawn or sit on the porch with Ethan as fireflies stitch light into the night, I realize I'm not weighed down by grief anymore. I'm buoyed by gratitude. You might wonder, can the simple acts of family-shared meals, joint labor, laughter, really heal what feels broken beyond repair? In my experience, yes. Even the smallest connections act like capillaries, bringing life back to numbed places. There's a psychological concept called social scaffolding, a framework of support that helps us rebuild after trauma. That was Ethan for me. He didn't let me drift. He anchored me, step by step, back to hope. His simple persistence, his way of saying, without words, "You're needed here," became my lifeline. I think we underestimate the power of these steady, everyday gestures. They can be as healing as any grand intervention. Now, I see the farm as more than fields and livestock. It's a living witness to resilience, an archive of stories, each stone and furrow holding memory and meaning. Sure, challenges remain, droughts, long days, uncertainty about tomorrow's harvest. But now, even on the hardest days, I know I'm not alone. I know that love, whether in the form of a nephew's knock on the door or a brother's reassuring hug, can quiet sorrows and reignite hope. So here's my invitation to you. If you're struggling, don't overlook the small, persistent acts of care around you. Hope doesn't always arrive in grand gestures. Sometimes, it comes in the steady, stubborn footsteps of someone who refuses to let you give up. For me, that was Ethan. Who is it for you? In the end, returning to the farm wasn't just a journey back, it was a journey forward. I've learned that healing is communal, rooted in a shared landscape of love and labor. And so, as I watch the sun rise over these fields, I'm reminded that every ending can become a beginning. That's the quiet, enduring miracle of hope.